Welcome to the Empaths Revolution podcast, the home of intersectional spirituality. Empaths Revolution is a platform dedicated to empowering, informing, and supporting empaths and other spiritually sensitive people via podcasts, expert guests, blogs, books, and personal one-to-one and group support. I'm your host, Harris Eddie Hill, and I'm non-binary, neurodivergent, and an intuitive empath. I'm a podcaster, best-selling author, NLP practitioner, and timeline therapist, and I'm pleased to bring you today's episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Empaths Revolution podcast. And today I'm joined by two of the four hosts from Mama's Boys podcast. Hey Noah and Dominic, how are you?
Doing very, very well, Harris, and it's really, really good to be here.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you for having us. And sorry that the other guys can't be here, but they have issues by themselves. But we two are here and we are going to make the best out of it. So thank you for having us, definitely.
No, it'd be good. And I'm so pleased that you could join us. Noah and Dominic, do you want to just tell us a little bit about where you live and what you do for work and stuff like that?
For sure. So my name is Noah. I'm one of the four hosts for the Mama's Boys. I'm a French American. Really weird story. Was born in Nebraska. My dad's French. I lived in France for 23 years. Have been in the States now for 3 years. And I am a filmmaker slash photographer slash writer slash podcaster. I sort of juggle a whole bunch of different jobs, but the one that I get paid for is doing grip and electric work on commercials, music videos, independent films, things like that. And currently I am writing a TV show with a couple guys about 3 dudes who work in a the graveyard shift in a gas station, and their town is filled with supernatural beings and stuff like that, and they sort of go through wacky adventures, and they hate each other and love each other sometimes. It's the worst pitch in the world. Please forgive me.
But, it sounds like great fun.
Yeah. So that's basically me.
Nice. Welcome, Noah. Dominic, what about you? Whereabouts are you?
My name is Dominic and I come from beautiful Austria. I just love the nature in Austria, and I really am happy that I am able to live here. And basically what I do currently, I still work in sales, but I'm trying to find my way, and I'm trying to find myself, so to speak, and what I really want to do, because I know that sales, it is fun because you have a lot to do with people. You get to experience all kind of stuff with a lot of different types of people, which is cool. But I'm definitely looking to go into the healing direction. So currently try to figure that out, and been learning a lot about spirituality and about life in the last year since we started with the podcast. Because the reason we started the podcast, for the people who don't know us, is that we all got together in an ayahuasca retreat and we met each other, and we decided to make a podcast about our magical experience there and about spirituality in general. So that I feel like that will be the purpose of my life, basically, helping people in their healing work and also healing myself, because I figured out that I still have a lot of healing work to do. And so that's basically me in a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah, that's so cool. What actually led both of you to think, an ayahuasca retreat sounds like a really good idea?
So for me personally, I've always been somebody who wanted to explore more of himself. To sort of explain why I went to do ayahuasca to begin with, my reason, sort of in a very roundabout way, started from the day I was born. And the reason being is because I had a accident when I was born, which resulted in a brain atrophy. I didn't get enough blood or oxygen sent to my brain, and 30% of it got affected, which in turn, doctors diagnosed me with autism. So the reason why that's important was because I had this traumatic experience happen at birth, but I didn't really have autism at the same time. I was in this sort of weird limbo where I was diagnosed with it, but I had the unique capability of repairing my brain over time, to which I could get better and better and better and better. So I literally went through the lower middle end of the autistic spectrum all the way to the top to Asperger's by the time I went to high school. And then when I went to university and out of university, that's when I got out of the spectrum, essentially. And when I got out of the spectrum, I had an identity crisis. You know, I had experienced life in such a different way, and I didn't feel like that I belonged anywhere. I didn't feel like I could relate to anybody. I didn't know who I could talk with, because I gotten to the point where I couldn't really talk with autistic people anymore, or people in my support group, because I just wasn't the same anymore. I couldn't really talk to anybody who was neurotypical, because I wasn't exactly neurotypical. And so I felt very, very alone. And due to a couple traumas that happened in not my previous life, but my childhood and in my high school years, I just became very depressed, very suicidal, had a lot of mental issues going on. The pandemic certainly didn't help. I had felt very, very much alone in my work when I was working right at the start of the pandemic. And what ended up happening was that I gotten myself into a rut where I didn't feel like I could get out of. I just thought, the sadness is me, the depression is me. I just want to end it all. I don't want to be in this experience anymore. And I didn't necessarily go to therapy, because throughout my entire life, I went to therapy for 16, 17 years, 15 to 17 years, around that. I went to therapy. I started going to therapy when I was 4 or 5, and that kept going till I was 20, 21. So I had gotten to the point where I knew what therapists would say. And when you know what like therapists could say, and you know different techniques, and you know what answers they want, to me, that made me more incentivized to tell them what they wanted to hear than what I was actually feeling. And I thought to myself, I need something that I can't escape from, and that I can't move away from, that I can't lie to. And during that time, about 4 years before I took ayahuasca, it was the first moment that I heard about ayahuasca. And I was always very intrigued. I'm a little bit experienced in psychedelics, mainly mushrooms, MDMA, an incredible amount of edibles, an incredible amount of edibles. I mean, holy fucking shit. I can't tell you how many edibles I've had in a single night sometimes. Like just that, like just an obscene amount of edibles. But anyway, that's a story for another time. So I decided that I was going to try it, you know, and if it didn't work, I was going to kill myself. So I went on Google and I looked up some reputable ayahuasca retreats, and one of them was the retreat that I met up with Dominic, Nick, and Z, which is Arcana. And Arcana is, in my opinion, the most reputable ayahuasca retreat. This isn't honest, like a sponsor or anything like that. You know, I'm not being paid by Arcana to just say this. This was just what I had experienced at the retreat. Amazing food, amazing people, amazing expeditions, and amazing care from the shamans and facilitators. I really don't have any negative things to say about Arcana except for the fucking mosquitoes. But at the same time, that's not their fault. They live in the Amazon. So that is what it is. But I decided to go for it. Like, why not? I'll go for a week. I'll see what happens. And I went, and it completely and utterly just changed my life forever. Even to this day, it's just nothing has been the same ever since.
Wow. That's amazing.
Amazing story. I'm always in awe. I heard the story probably like 5-6 times now, but I'm always in awe of the story, man. Because like I know, and to kind of steer the wheel why I got there, I know what it feels like to experience and to go through a depression. And it is such a good decision that you made, that you want to change that, and that you always kept trying and always had hope that you can change it. Because I think the terrible thing about the depression by times is that you don't have the feeling that things are necessarily can get better. And I think that is the worst thing about the depression. And that is basically also the reason why I got there last year, because I was in a state of mind where I was just lost, and I was just not able to feel anything anymore if I look back to this time now. And I was just numb, I guess, and life was just heavy. It was just heavy, and I didn't know where to go in my life, and I was lacking any sort of purpose, any sort of direction. And I don't know, I had the feeling that I lost myself and that I lost the person that I used to be. And so I was struggling every day, and I was not feeling any joy in life at all, even in the moments where I should have felt joy and where it should have been good. It was just numb. So I thought I can't go on with this anymore, and I have to change something. And I also, like Noah, had some experiences with mushrooms before, and with no, to this time it was just mushrooms. And so I was always, from the first minute on when I heard about psychedelics, I was hooked. Something in me immediately recognized the huge potential that mushrooms have. Let it be my soul or my subconscious, whatever you want to call it, but some part of me always knew that this is going to be a huge part of your life, not only for your own healing, but also for, I don't know, I just felt the calling that those compounds are basically going to be with me in my life, even in work and in my personal life. It was just a very strong pull. So the same thing with ayahuasca. And I still can remember the day where I booked the retreat. I got up in the morning, and it was probably the day where I felt worst in the depression. And I got up, and it was just heavy. Everything was so heavy, and I felt like sleeping again. But somehow I pulled myself out of the bed and went to work. And at a certain point at work, it was like my body was screaming, "Stop! You can't do this anymore." I felt this huge amount of sadness in my chest, and then I had to stop. There was no way that I were able to continue work from that moment on. So I went back to my car, and actually I cried so much because I was, as I said, just so sad. And then I decided you can't go on with that anymore. And that is when I decided to go to Peru, to the Arcana and to the ayahuasca experience. And I went there for 3 weeks. And yeah, it was also a life-changing 3 weeks. Definitely, I experienced so much bliss there that I basically never experienced before in my life. I can remember moments where my body felt like I am going to explode out of gratitude. And I was continually thinking, how much gratitude can a body even hold? How much gratitude can a single person even hold? And it was like I remembered my soul, and I remembered my true origin. And up to this day, even though I still have difficulties and I still have problems I want to work on, and even though I still have not found myself fully, this still gives me so much peace that I'm going to make my way, because I remembered where I came from. And yeah, that is how I got into the Arcana.
I love that. So obviously you've both had, and for Z and Nick as well, who've talked about it a lot on your podcast, it's been really life-changing what it's done for you. How do you think it's changed your perception, and how do you deal with challenges differently now since you've done ayahuasca?
So I was always a very faithful person, you could say. I grew up very Christian, and I always had like faith in God and heaven and all that sort of business. But I wasn't ever really sure, if that makes sense. Like, even though I had faith, it's sort of like, I don't know if this is real. I don't know if heaven's real. I don't know if this or that is real. And this unsureness about what this life is, it gave me a lot of anxiety. It gave me a lot of like, I don't know what this is about. I don't know why I'm alive. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I should be here to begin with. And ayahuasca for me, in the way that it changed sort of these anxieties and the way that I deal with challenges and deal with depression or deal with sadness or deal with anger, is that I don't have any questions about it anymore, because I had experienced what it was like to die. I had experienced what it was like to pass on to another place. And I had felt that because I had experienced this overwhelming feeling of being one, that I could ask questions for all of eternity but never get an answer. So during this experience, what it taught me about challenges was that I'm always going to receive challenges. I'm always going to receive pain. I'm always going to receive joy. I'm always going to continuously experience, for not even like the end of time, because there is no time. It's just experiencing whatever is in the moment. So there was never any questions for me to really question anymore. I think that I had a lot of attachments to things that happened to me, much rather than it just being something I was meant to go through to begin with. You know, we're each uniquely supposed to experience our own lives. And I just had always felt, because I felt like I never belonged, I wasn't supposed to be here. But the fact of the matter is that I realized the mere fact that I'm born means that I belong. It means that I am meant to be here, and I am meant to experience things. So I think the overarching conclusion of how I deal with challenges now is to just accept it of how it is, and to stop questioning why things happen, and to just accept things as they are.
Mhm. I love that. because that is also something that I was going to talk about, because as you said, the thing with ayahuasca is that you got a strong sense that everything in your life and everything that will happen for a reason, you know, that everything has to be exactly the way that it is, because otherwise you wouldn't be at exact this moment right here, right now. When without all the things that happened, you wouldn't be here. And this is a great mindset that you can develop when it's about dealing with problems, because if we talk about soul, and I'm a strong believer that before we came here to this planet, our soul already planned our lives, and already also planned the challenges that we will go through. And whenever it is already planned and in our highest good to develop, in our highest good to be more conscious. And when you approach problems from that perspective, it gives you a lot of peace and gratitude even for the problem, because you know that it is for your highest good, and it absolutely has to be this way for you to be stronger, to be more conscious, and to rise your energy if you want to. So I, as Noah, have as much more stronger sense that everything has to be as it is right now, and that nothing happens, or everything happens for a reason. Let's say it like that. So that is the way how the perspective changed for me, basically.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, you know, you guys have talked a lot about trauma and stuff like that, and recovery and all that kind of thing on your podcast. And trauma recovery is a big part of my story as well. And I often, you know, being in this intersectional space, you know, like in my areas, I've got a lot of people who are strong on mental health and boundaries, and the LGBTQ plus community, neurodivergent community. You know, it's quite a big melting pot. And something I'm with you, Dominic, in that I feel that even with everything I've been through, it makes sense to me too that I chose this life, and I don't necessarily think I exactly chose every single challenge. I think some of them I view it more like those things happened to me because my energy was off because of how I'd been brought up or how I'd been taught to behave. And actually, in that, then a big problem or a big trauma happening because of the way that I'd been taught to be, it showed me where my weaknesses were or my vulnerabilities that were like unhealthy, or that something I needed to fix. So I definitely view it that way. But I do view a lot of pushback in the community when talking about mental health, and particularly from trauma survivors saying like, I didn't choose this, and like, you know, there's no reason, and that sort of thing. What would your response be to somebody who doesn't like the whole everything happens for a reason thing?
Oh, that is a good one. That is a very good one. I would say you don't have to believe that everything happens for a reason, because in my opinion it does, you know. And even, yeah, it is a difficult one, because it is more like a feeling that you get. It's not something necessarily purely mental. It's just a feeling that I got from the ayahuasca, that everything is like it is supposed to be. It's very difficult to explain for me, because like you have to experience it for yourself, and you have to understand it on not only on the mental plane, but also on the feeling plane. But eventually, like what I experienced, and this is what I respond, what I experienced as Noah, I experienced how it is to die, and I felt the peace that will come over all of us when we are going. And in that state, everything made perfect sense for me. It was not a single bit of doubt that everything, like, I just knew it, you know. I just knew that everything happens for a reason. And in that state, after you let go of everything on the ego plane and you just return to oneness and to source, at least for me, it felt like 100% sense. Like everything makes 100% sense. And I've chosen this. And yeah, it is more like a feeling. And I think it is very difficult to just grasp it on the mental plane. But I don't know what Noah has to say about that.
You know, I'm going to try and say this in the most gentle way that I can, because in the past, when I've tried to explain what my stance is on this, I don't want to offend anybody or to say that people have chosen their traumas, because I have been in a situation where I felt like I was definitely a victim of a lot of things that I couldn't control personally. And at the same time, I know what it's like to stay in a victim mentality. And to me, I would much rather not be in that mentality anymore than to be. Because when I think there's a specific time, not really specific, but there's a time in which it's okay to be in that victim mentality because you're ruminating over what happened. You're trying to process everything that happened. And if it was something out of your control, you know, for sure. But at the same time, I know completely for certain I am not a victim, and I have my power in that to say that I am me and I am living my life, and that no one will have power over me. Because what I had felt like was that when I was in a victim mentality, I would give power to other people and their actions of how they affected me. And I didn't want to give that power anymore. So I decided to give that power to myself. Now, in a spiritual sense, maybe we did choose this. You know, I agree with Dominic, to which, like, when I died, I had certainly experienced the fact that, like, I went somewhere else and I put all that pain aside. I'd put all that life, all that pain, all that love aside, and it went somewhere else to a place that was just beyond. I can't even imagine it anymore. Like, if I try to imagine it with my current brain capacity, like I bug the fuck out. I'm like, like, I can't fathom it. Like, it's just, but I know what it is. And it gave me this sense of, like, everything that I went through was something that was supposed to happen. No matter how much attachment I put onto these experiences that gave me so much pain, so much anger, so much sadness, so much rage. And there's a time, I think, in everybody's life where you should ask yourself, how long do I keep up the victim mentality? How long do I keep being sorry for myself? How long do I keep reliving that? How long do I keep giving that time power when that time has passed and that person or that situation is over and done with? How do I deal with that anger? And I think the one thing that ayahuasca has taught me significantly the most was how to let go. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's most psychedelics is perhaps one of the biggest lessons it can ever teach you is let go. But it's hard.
Are you looking to get your energy in order, spring clean your life, and manifest things you actually want? My Align Your Life Starter Pack has helped people to relieve insomnia, anxiety, to become grounded, and to manifest exciting new things, as well as cut energetic cords with people who were draining their energy. And as a bonus, it's designed with non-visual and neurodivergent people in mind, so it's more accessible than most things currently on the market. Affordable and instantly downloadable, you can find it at mooksharrishill.com/mybl. Align your life, reclaim your power.
It's super fucking hard.
Yeah, it is. I've talked about my own stuff on previous podcasts, but just as a very brief overview, when I was 9, I was sexually assaulted by an adult. And I lived with PTSD for 20 years. And during that time, it happened. There was another guy when I was in my teens, and another guy when I was in my 20s. And I was really put off of drugs by my parents. So growing up, it was never, like weed was the main one that, I would have every so often. I think if it was legal here, then that would be my drug of choice. I don't really drink. I tried cocaine a bit when I was younger, but I think my healing was always going to come in a different way. Like it was never going to be plant medicine, because I just didn't have access to that. It's only in the last few years that I've even considered that I could do it, because just the idea of it freaked me out. But I went through I was 28 and I'd gone to a therapist for something completely unrelated. And she said, "What do you want to get out of this therapy?" And it's somebody I knew. She was also, she's spiritual. She's very much an empath as well. So we were on the same page. And she said, "What do you want to get out of this?" And I said, "Well, I want to find out why I'm still anxious and blah, blah, blah." And she said, "What about your PTSD?" And at this point I'd had it. It was 19 years at that point that I'd had it. And I said, "Well, I deal with it okay, I think." And she's like, "Do you want to get rid of it?" And I was like, "You can do that?" And she's like, "Yeah, we can do that. We could just get rid of it." And I was like, "Fucking sign me up. Can we do it now?" And she's like, "No. we have to do some work first and sort of like, like build some positive foundations. And, like I've not worked with you before, so we need to do the prep work." And so by the time we actually did it the following year, it was in 2 sessions, like 2 one-hour sessions, and it was gone forever. And it used to be that I would only have to look at like a news article on my phone with just one word in it, and I would just completely lose it. Mm-hmm. I've had like breakdowns in like car parks at the supermarket, all kinds of shit. And then it was just gone. And I was so ready for it. So now when people say, "Oh, I think I've got PTSD," I'm like, "Do you want to get rid of it?" And it's fascinating how much of the time the answer is no. Really? I'm like, this is insane. This is literally insane. And, a lot of these things are friends and people I know who've struggled with something for decades. And I'm like, that is so far in the past. It happened when you were a kid, or it happened when you lived in a different fucking country. Like, you're so far removed from those environments of where it happened and those people. Like, what's still holding you to it? And they're like, "Oh no, I'm just gonna live like this." Like, mm-hmm. Okay, well, it's your choice. It's your choice. Yeah.
And sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I think like I get the victim mentality a little bit, because it's fascinating to me. I definitely was in victim mentality before, but I felt like it's because I didn't know what else to do. And the second that somebody helped me and said, "Oh, we can get rid of it," I was like, "Oh, thank God for that." Yeah. And so like, it just baffles me that some people want to remain, like they want to continue that energy. They don't want to get rid of their trauma. And I don't know how you both feel about it, but I also wonder if people don't deal with their stuff over years, I wonder if that's what turns into disease sometimes.
For sure.
Yeah.
I've done a hypnosis course very recently. It's called RTT, if you know it. And one of the things that Marissa Peer says, who is doing the hypnosis course, I'm sure a lot of people know her. One of the things she says is the feeling that can't find the expression in tears will cause other organs to weep. And I definitely feel that because I can see it for myself now. I have to admit I've not been very honest to myself in the last few weeks, and now my body really says, okay, stop and now be honest to yourself because I'm a little bit sick right now, and I think that is definitely a sign of my body that I should be more honest to myself right now again. And that is also one of the things that ayahuasca taught me, that if you are suppressing something, the body will develop some kind of disease over time, 100%. At least that is what I experienced there. And what I still want to, I kind of want to circle back to what you said, because I think whenever someone is don't want to look at something inside themselves, I think it's also because they are still in a state of victim mentality, as you both said. And also, I think they are not very honest to themselves, because, like, what I experienced when I made the decision that I want to take responsibility over my life and that I want to be very honest with myself, a lot of things came up that I was suppressing all the time, just because I told myself, now it's the time to be really honest with yourself. And for sure, that's painful. That's painful. And I don't want to play that down. Healing is oftentimes not a super pleasant experience, and it hurts and it's painful, and you cry, and you will have days where you feel super energy drained and where you just feel like crying and everything hurts. But eventually, and I can promise this, if you go on the path of healing, everything will make sense again and everything will be so much brighter. And I think that's a big misconception a lot of people have in general when they go on the healing path, that once they're healed, everything is just going to be, floating on the cloud of bliss all day and just experience just beautiful things. But life is, I guess life is not going to be that way, because as Noah said, you will face challenges, you will feel pain, but hey, that's all part of life. And what I experienced in the last few weeks also, when you really allow yourself to feel pain, it can also be a very beautiful experience. This, I feel so much pain, right? It sounds kind of wrong and weird, but it really is. So yeah, that's my take on that. So I guess being more honest with yourself is super, super crucial when you want to get out of this victim mentality.
Yeah, definitely. I think with the pain thing as well, it's just a sign that you're alive. I used to box, and I was terrified of confrontation, so I decided to go and learn how to do it. And the first time I got punched in the face, I was so scared. And then I got punched in the face and I was like, oh, that was okay. So I did my training for 8 weeks. I did my first match. It was like in front of like 1,000 people. It was for charity. And there was a big emotional, it's such an emotional process going through this. Like the actual match at the end was not the highlight of the whole thing. It was like the mental and the emotional stuff that you have to go through to get to that point. And then on the actual night, there was this big climax. Like I went and drank, I don't really drink alcohol, but I drank a whole bottle of Prosecco to myself, no glass, just straight out of the bottle. And because of all the adrenaline, I didn't feel anything. And I just was like, oh, this is shit. And I went home. And the next day I was like, I don't know if I will go back to boxing if this was just supposed to be 8 weeks. I don't know what I'll do.
Mhm.
And then I left it maybe a week, and I was like, I really miss it. So I went back just to train, just for myself, and I got punched in the face. And I was like, I've missed this so much. I really loved it. But also what you're saying about victim mentality, it's something I've noticed in myself, is that whilst I was in victim mentality, because I didn't know what else to do, I didn't have any other outlet. No, I didn't understand that I could get better. I just felt stuck and angry and pissed off. And during that time, I noticed in retrospect that I had a real intolerance to waiting and patience. And, you know, anytime somebody said, you know, suffering is going to be a part of your life forever, that made me feel awful.
Mhm.
And now, like, since I've gone through the healing of the big stuff, or at least what I've done so far, when people say things like that, or like, you have to be patient, these things take a long time, suddenly I'm like, yeah, that's okay. I used to hate that.
Mhm. And it's also denying the present moment, you know, because like I have the feeling you can be super present and in a victim mentality both at the same time, because being super present means that you accept the moment as it is right here and now. And I think in general, when you deal with feelings like pain or victim mentality, bringing acceptance to them is super valuable. And by accepting also that you feel shit, it is so much more peaceful than when you are always having resistance against it and pushing the feeling away and try to avoid it. So yeah, just accepting those feelings is a key point, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Noah, did you have anything to add?
Um, I wanted to add that healing is not a destination, it's a journey. And I feel like a lot of people assume that, like, once you get over the hump to like the healing, as Dominic said, it's like, oh, rainbows and unicorns and flowers and all that. But then you realize beyond the rainbows, unicorns, and flowers, there's like a fucking really big mountain. And you're like, oh, I wonder what's over there and why is that there? Was it, that was, at least for me, what happened when I was out of the ayahuasca high after like 3 months. Because like, I don't think a lot of people talk about this in the community, but sometimes you can have an ayahuasca high for 3 months and you're just in perfect bliss in the moment. You have no thoughts. You're just living life how it is. And it's super fucking awesome. But at the same time, you're just in this like blissful state. But for me, on the other side, I realized, aha, ayahuasca wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. And I have so much more to discover about myself, about other people, and about my life. And yeah, it's just, I was like you, Harris. I hated waiting. I hated being patient for just like figuring my shit out. And now it's easy.
Hmm.
You know, I love being alive. Being alive is so fucking good. It's so fucking amazing. And I don't mind just experiencing things from day to day, moment to moment. But I guess for anybody, you know, listening to this wonderful episode of Empath's Revolution, take your time. Even if it sucks dick, take your time.
Definitely. It was the same for me after I recovered from PTSD. I was like, oh my God, I'm free and I've got my life back. And I felt like I was truly myself, like, or the most myself that I had ever been.
Mhm.
And that was in the summer of 2009. No, wait. 2017. Summer of 2017 is when I finished my trauma therapy, I think. Yeah, I think that's right. And then by the summer next year, I had a breakdown, and I was like, for fuck's sake. I was like, my life completely fell apart, and then I went traveling, and then at the end of the traveling, it all gone really well, and then the last 2 months were shit, and then I had another breakdown. I was like, for fuck's sake. So I came back home and I was like, yeah, I'm definitely not done. I went back to my therapist that had helped me with the first lot of trauma, and I was like, I'm still really wonky, there's still loads of stuff not right. So she had just done her master's in traumatology, and she took me through this brand new process that I'd never done before, and like it was really good. But I remember I had a CBT lady that I went to like 10 years ago, and she was helping me with anxiety and being too scared to like say or do stuff and to ask for help. Like I was just scared of things a lot. She said, you've got social phobia. I was like, no, I don't. She's like, you're scared of how everyone's going to react to everything you do, say, or even if you breathe wrong. And I was like, oh yeah. And then she said, you'll probably have bits of anxiety like on and off like for the rest of your life. And I was like, oh, how dare you say that to me? And now like I've got to a point where I'm like, yeah, I might get anxious sometimes, but it's not the end of the world. I don't panic anymore. I'm just like, oh, it's just trying to tell me something.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But then, earlier it'd be like, oh my God, everything's gone wrong. Like, what if I get suicidal again? Or what if like my whole life explodes? Or, what if I like lose my home, or people, I lose my friends, or, and now I'm like, yeah, it'll be all right. The last breakdown, everyone's like, are you okay? And I was like, no. And like, can I do anything? I was like, no, I'll be fine eventually. And like, oh, do you feel suicidal? I was like, yeah, I've thought about it quite a lot, but I won't do it. And they were like, oh, that's really terrible. And I was like, no, it's just part of life. It's fine. Like I will get better. And they were like, oh. And it was like, I don't know about you two, but I'm now really comfortable with the uncomfortable. If somebody's like, somebody's died, or, so had some really bad news, or they feel like shit, I'm just like, that's what it is today. We don't need to change it. And a lot of the people around me hate that. They're like, no, we need to fix it immediately. I'm like, no, we don't.
I agree with you on that. I mean, I've had a couple people die since ayahuasca, and it hasn't been like the same way as how I would have normally reacted. But like, what's interesting to me about the West, I'm not sure about England or Austria, but I know in the States, when people ask, hey, how are you? They're never, ever want to hear, oh, I'm not doing good. The response always that you should always answer is, yeah, I'm good, man. How are you? That's the scripted line. And I've tried it with a couple people where I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling so well right now. And they're like, yeah, oh yeah, you should see a therapist. Like, I don't know, man. Like, what's got you down? Some people won't even react. They'll be like, oh yeah, sometimes it's hard. And they'll just keep walking. Nobody knows how to fucking like react. And it goes to show that like I think maybe like in the West, people just avoid pain at all costs. Avoid it, squash it down, just like hide it in a closet. Yeah, we're not going to deal with that right now.
I mean, I would go so far as to say that it's probably easily linked to things like white supremacy, because that is very much divorcing us all from our femininity, or making us feel ashamed of it, of our connection to the divine, to our emotions, to all that normal stuff. I don't know. But yeah, definitely in my life, I mean, I remember, I think by the time I got into my 20s, I started to realize, I was like, it's not healthy to like hold your emotions in. So if I felt like I needed to cry, I'd go and like get a corner and get like a roll of toilet paper or something and just prepare myself and then just go for it. And my dad found me once in a dark corner of our dining room, and he like crying, and he was like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm just crying. He was like, well, you should stop crying. I was like, no, Dad, I need to. So if you're uncomfortable, you should leave. And he was like, oh. and now like I only spend time with people who are honest and don't do the social bullshit, because I can't stand it.
Mhm.
I,
And the thing about it is when you ask someone and their response is always good and they are not honest with themselves, they will never feel super ecstatic. They will always just feel on this level, and their life will never get highs and lows, because like that is the reward of feeling pain in my eyes. When you truly dare and when you're truly brave enough to go through the shit, you will also have days where you feel just extremely energetic and on the highest highs of life, and where you are just grateful for everything, and where you could hug the whole earth and everything on it. And then there are days, like for me today, where I just feel shit, and it's okay. It's super okay. And to just accept it. And I love what you said, Harris. It will be okay. Yes, maybe I feel shit right now, but it will be okay eventually. I will figure things out. Everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for my highest good, and I will be okay. And that's all part of life. Dare to feel life, I would say.
yeah, definitely. And I also think, like, no matter what you're facing, there will be something you can do about it.
Mhm.
I've helped a lot of people in the past with sort of trauma and anxiety and stuff, to really get down to the bottom of what it is, or to help them to process it or whatever. And I've had people say, like, well, I can't afford a coach, or I can't afford a trauma person. And I'm like, well, there's a book I can recommend. I think it's like $8. I also know about this kind of mini program that helps you to deal with like long-term emotional problems. It's free. And then, oh no, I don't have time for that. So like, there are answers there for everybody. I do think it's getting to the point where there's so much information out there, and so much, so many support groups. I run a support group for non-binary people on Facebook, which has got like over 2,000 people in it. I think there's a support group and a community for anything that you need, and people can point you in the direction of anything that you want to do.